Imagine this. You wake up, step out on your porch with a mug of coffee, and the world is exactly the way you left it until you open one envelope. No fire, no break-in, no storm. Just a single sheet of paper calmly informing you that your 50 acres of private ranch land are now community property under an HOA you've never joined, never paid, never even heard of. According to this letter, my fields were now a public recreation area. My fences were unauthorized barriers. My family's ranch was suddenly open for hiking, picnics, dog walking, basically anything the neighborhood felt entitled to. I stared at that letter and thought, how can a bunch of strangers vote themselves ownership of my land? That's when it clicked. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a land grab wrapped in legalese, and I was going to make them regret every word. Before we dive into this circus, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if HOA revenge stories are your thing, hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes after this. When the HOA sedan rolled up my driveway like it had sirens on it, I already knew this wasn't a mistake. You don't send a pseudo-cop car with a giant logo on the door unless you're trying to intimidate somebody. And real HOA people, they're pros at playing discount government official. The sedan braked in a puff of dust. Out climbed a woman who looked like someone had overinflated her into a blazer. Round face, lips pursed so tight they could slice plastic, posture ramrod straight with self-importance. I didn't need an introduction. I could smell the entitlement from 10 feet away. She marched up my driveway clutching a clipboard to her chest like it was the Constitution. 2 other board members trailed her overdressed, overconfident, and clearly allergic to manual labor. Mr. Monroe, she announced, reading my name like it was on a warrant. I'm Margaret Dawson, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. We sent you a letter regarding the community land designation. She said designation like this was a ribbon cutting for a mall, not a robbery. I crossed my arms and said nothing. I let the silence stretch until they started shifting their weight. People like Margaret aren't used to being ignored. They're used to compliance. Well, she prodded, tapping her clipboard, we'd like to discuss next steps. I raised an eyebrow. Next steps? Yes. She smiled that syrupy, patronizing smile people reserve for toddlers and idiots. Your land has now been incorporated into the HOA jurisdiction due to historical community usage, so we'll need your cooperation in removing any private property signage and barriers. I put a hand up. Hold on, did you say incorporated into your HOA? My land? Yes, she repeated slowly, as if explaining what clouds are. I laughed. Not a polite laugh, a sharp, disbelieving bark that probably echoed off the barn. Her smile twitched. I understand this may be surprising, Mr. Monroe, but I assure you, it's completely legal. Our members have long enjoyed walking, sightseeing, and recreational activities on your ranch. The board has recognized this historical use by officially adopting it into our community plan. Historical use, I repeated. Lady, the only history on this ranch is cows and sweat. Nobody's ever hiked here except a stray steer. The man behind her, tall, thin, nervous, cleared his throat. I've personally walked through your eastern pasture many times. Beautiful view. You walk through my pasture? I asked. He nodded. Yes. Well, the HOA shared a community map that included. That's called trespassing, I said flatly. Margaret cut in with a laugh so fake it sounded painful. Oh, Mr. Monroe, I think you're misunderstanding. Once incorporated, community members may use the land responsibly as part of the shared environment. It fosters unity and neighborhood cohesion. I took one slow step closer, not threatening, just enough that she had to look up to hold my gaze. So you and your little committee took a vote, I said, and that vote, among yourselves, gave you the right to claim my land. Margaret tilted her head. The community decided, not the community, I said. You voted to steal my land. Her lips pinched even tighter. She wasn't used to anyone calling it what it was. Let me put it plainly, she said. The community has decided your ranch is part of our jurisdiction. It's time you cooperate with the transition. The transition. The rest, I repeated. Like my land was switching cable providers. Before I could respond, a silver SUV pulled in. Doors flew open and a family spilled out, mom, dad, 2 kids, and a golden retriever trotting ahead like he owned the place. They waved at Margaret. She waved back like the queen at a parade. What the hell? I muttered. The dad tossed a frisbee to his son. We heard the HOA opened up the ranch for recreational use, he called. Figured we'd come check it out. Check it out, I repeated. My land. My private land. They started marching toward my pasture. Whoa! Hey! I shouted, striding toward them. What do you think you're doing? The dad blinked at me like I was the problem. Using the community space. It is not community space, I snapped. This is my ranch. But the HOA said, the mom started. I don't give a damn what the HOA said, I growled. Get off my property. The dad frowned. There's no need to be rude, buddy. Buddy. I was about 2 seconds from personally walking them off the place when Margaret put a hand on my shoulder. The gesture was so presumptuous, I almost knocked it off by reflex. Jack, she said sweetly, as if we were old friends. This is exactly what we were talking about, community members enjoying their space together. I shrugged her hand off like a wasp. Their space, I repeated. More cars rolled in SUVs, minivans, even a convertible with a cooler strapped to the trunk. People piled out with picnic baskets, portable grills, folding chairs, volleyball nets, kites. Kids ran around shrieking. Someone started stringing up a net on my pasture. Something inside me snapped, clean and loud. I turned to Margaret. Get these people off my property, now. She widened her eyes in theatrical innocence. Jack, there's no need for hostility. This transition will be much smoother if you cooperate. I'm not cooperating with a damn thing, I said through clenched teeth. And if you don't get off my land in 5 seconds, I will escort you down the driveway with a garden hose. That got through. Her smug mask slipped for a heartbeat, then snapped back. We will escalate this matter, she snapped, spinning on her heel. Her board members scurried after her like startled ducklings. Around us, the mood shifted. People quietly packed up. The golden retriever gave me a confused look as he hopped back into the SUV. Margaret climbed into her sedan and glared at me through the glass. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. I gave her a slow, mean grin. You'll be hearing from my shotgun. They peeled out. When the dust settled, I knew exactly what this was. Not a misunderstanding, not just Karen nonsense. This was a land war, and I was going to fight it with every ounce of stubbornness my grandfather drilled into me. I had no idea how far the HOA would push it or how ugly I'd have to get to protect what my family built. But standing in that driveway with rage humming under my skin, I made a promise. They wanted a community asset. I'd give them a lesson in community electricity. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed strangers spreading out over my ranch like tourists in a national park. Soccer balls in my pasture. Grills near my barn. It was like I'd developed PTSD from potlucks. At dawn, I stepped outside with black coffee and scanned the fields, half expecting a jogger to pop out of a hay bale. For a few blessed seconds, it was quiet. My land looked like my land again. Then I heard tires on gravel. A bright blue minivan crept down my driveway like it had a reserved spot. The door slid open and kids poured out, yelling, already sprinting for my fields. Not again, I muttered. Mom climbed out next, oversized sunglasses, yoga pants messy bun, holding 2 iced coffees and a leash attached to a gigantic golden doodle. She waved cheerfully. Hi! The HOA said the ranch is open for morning playgroups. Playgroups, I repeated, walking toward her. No, not here, not now, not ever. This is private property. She blinked, genuinely puzzled, but we saw it on the HOA app. New community recreation area? I inhaled slowly, counting to 3. The HOA lied, I said. This ranch is not community property. It is not part of the HOA. It is mine. Her smile faltered. But Margaret said it was approved. Of course she did. I pointed at her kids. Please get them off my land. She hesitated, torn between blind faith and Margaret and reality. Eventually she whistled for the kids, loaded them back into the van, and gave me a frosty look. I'm going to talk to Margaret about this, she said, as if I were the inconvenience. She drove off, leaving a dust trail and a pressure spike in my skull. I didn't even have time to exhale before the next vehicle arrived, a dented pickup full of teenagers. They parked crooked, hopped out laughing with backpacks and a drone. You boys lost? I asked. Nope, the tallest one said proudly. We're filming a project. The HOA said this ranch is a designated scenic area. A what? Scenic area, he repeated, slower, for community photography and outdoor recreation. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Get off my land. Dude, relax, one protested. We're not hurting. Get off my land. They backed up fast, dove into the truck, and peeled out. I snagged their forgotten drone and tossed it into the bed as they jerked away. By mid-morning, I had turned away a yoga class, a dog-walking group, and a guy with a metal detector looking for relics. Apparently, Margaret had gone full dictator and blasted out a community-wide announcement christening my ranch as the HOA's latest amenity. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or break something. The breaking point came at noon. I was fixing the barn latch when I heard music, loud, backyard BBQ music. I rounded the corner. There he was, a heavy-set man in a tank top standing next to a big smoker he'd rolled onto my property. He flipped ribs with tongs and nodded at me like we were neighbors at a block party. Hey man, you want some? HOA said this is a designated grill-friendly zone. I stared. A grill-friendly zone. He nodded. Yeah, part of the new park expansion. I paused. You have 10 seconds to get that smoker off my land before I drag it to the highway myself. He looked at my face and realized I wasn't bluffing. He packed up at record speed. By late afternoon, I felt less like a rancher and more like a bouncer. Every few minutes, another car nosed down the driveway, then backed off as soon as they saw me standing there. One thing became very clear. If I didn't end this, they'd never stop. Margaret wasn't just overstepping. She was running a slow-motion invasion using the neighborhood as her infantry, so I started documenting photos of every car, every person, every unauthorized activity, timestamps, faces, all of it. That's when she showed up. White Lexus, polished and judgmental. It parked dead in front of my gate like the car itself disapproved of me. Margaret stepped out, blazer, clipboard, sunglasses dark enough to block out guilt. She walked toward me with that usual air of gravity. Doesn't apply. Mr. Monroe, she said coolly, we've received several reports about your behavior toward community members today. My behavior, I repeated. Yes. She flipped a page. Multiple residents reported hostility, obstruction of community access, and aggressive conduct unbecoming of a cooperative neighbor. I let out a low, humorless chuckle. You send people onto my land and then accuse me of obstructing access. Yes, she said, utterly serious. This is community land now. No, I said. This is my land, and you are trespassing. She sighed dramatically. Jack, the board voted. I don't care about your board. Well, she said, eyes narrowing, the community does, and we will continue with our integration plan whether you approve or not. Integration plan, I said. You make it sound like my ranch is being annexed by a foreign government. So let me get this straight, I continued. You think you can just declare my land part of your HOA? We already have, she replied smugly. And you think I'm going to sit back and let strangers wander through my ranch like it's a petting zoo? Yes, she said simply. That was the moment the anger sharpened into something solid. I stepped in, voice low. Listen carefully, Margaret. This land is mine. Not yours, not the HOA's, mine. Anyone who steps on it without permission is trespassing. She smirked, not for long. Then she turned, slid back into her Lexus, and drove off like she'd just won something. I watched her taillights disappear, my fists tight. Enough was enough. No more warnings, no more conversations. They wanted to act like my land was theirs. Fine. I'd show them what happens when you try to take what's mine. And the move I had in mind was going to change this neighborhood permanently. The second her Lexus vanished, I stormed inside and grabbed my phone like it was a weapon. If she wanted war, I'd give her war. I knew exactly who to call. Curtis McGraw. Curtis isn't just a lawyer. He's the urban legend HOAs whisper about whenever someone says lawsuit or overreach, the boogeyman of power drunk boards. And, lucky for me, an old friend. He picked up on the first ring. Jack, he said, sounding bored in that way that means he's amused. What flavor of stupidity did they go with this time? They're claiming my entire ranch is community property, I said, pacing hard enough to wear grooves in the floor. Silence. Then a low whistle. Damn. They spun the wheel and landed on Grand Theft acreage. Oh, it gets better. They've been telling the whole neighborhood my ranch is a public park. I've had minivans, yoga classes, drone kids, a barbecue dude who rolled a smoker halfway to my barn. Margaret practically held a meet and greet on my front porch. Curtis burst out laughing. Your ranch. A public park. God, I wish I had video of your face. This isn't funny. You're right, he said. It's hilarious and also very illegal. I stopped pacing. So what do I do? His tone shifted, razor sharp. You fight back, hard, but not stupid. First step, deterrence. Make your land physically and legally impossible to share. Fences, cameras, signs. Everything by the book, everything documented. I already have fences. Then electrify them. I blinked. Electrify them. Low voltage, non-lethal, he said. Legal in your county. Just enough to make trespassers rethink their life choices. A grin crept up before I could stop it. I like the way you think. Good. Second step. Evidence. Photos, dates, videos, witness names. Third, get to the county records office. If they filed anything to justify this mess, I want copies. And then, he said, almost cheerful, we crushed them. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and headed to the county building. Inside, the air smelled like dust and stale AC the universal government sent. The clerk behind the counter was a young guy eating chips and pretending not to see me. I need jurisdiction and property records for parcel 51B, I said, sliding the parcel number. He sighed like I'd ruined his day, pecked half-heartedly at a keyboard, and vanished into the back. 10 minutes later, he returned with a fat folder older than both of us. I took it to a table and started flipping. Deeds, boundaries, zoning updates. My grandfather's signature. My father's. Mine. Clear proof that this land had never been under HOA control. Then I found it. A form filed 3 weeks earlier. Annexation request for community integration. Submitted by Margaret Dawson. My jaw clenched. No owner signature. No landowner vote. Just Margaret's scribble and a list of made-up historical community uses. Hiking, bird watching, nature playgroups. All fiction. She hadn't bent the rules. She'd shredded them and written new ones. And as furious as it made me, it also handed me a weapon. I photographed every fraudulent page, tucked the copies into a folder, and drove straight to the HOA office attached to the clubhouse. You know the tight fake columns, plastic plants, a smell like lemon cleaner in desperation. Margaret sat behind a desk flipping papers with bureaucratic importance. She didn't even look up. Jack, she said in that syrupy tone that spiked my blood pressure. If you're here to discuss compliance, you'll need 4. I slapped the folder onto her desk so hard her pen jumped. She snapped her head up, annoyed. Excuse you. Open it, I said. She huffed, but opened it. Inside, copies of my deeds, her annexation form, photos of trespassers, all her lies staring back at her in black and white. Her face went pale. What is this? She stammered. This, I said evenly, is proof my land has never been in your HOA. This is proof you falsified an annexation. And this, I tapped the last page, is the bill you now owe me. Bill, she choked. Yes, if you're claiming my property has been under your jurisdiction, then, by your own logic, my land has been part of the HOA for 20 years, which means you owe me 20 years of unpaid HOA dues. I leaned in. The total is $212,000. Her mouth opened and closed like a stunned fish. One of the men behind her almost dropped his coffee. This is absurd, she whispered. No, I said. What's absurd is thinking you can steal 50 acres with a clipboard and a fantasy map. Her hands shook slightly. The board will never agree to this. Then I suggest, I said, picking up my folder, you find a way to make them. I walked out before she could recover. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something besides rage, leverage, power. But the war wasn't over. That night, sitting on my porch as the sun bled gold across my fields, I stared at the fence line my grandfather and I once mended together. This land was ours. I wasn't losing it to paperwork, lies, or a swarm of entitled neighbors. I opened a notebook and wrote my first move in big letters. Install electric fence, full perimeter, low volt, legal ASAP. Prepare for HOA retaliation. Because they would retaliate. People like Margaret don't accept defeat. They come back louder and dumber. But I was ready. Tomorrow, the real fight would start. The next morning, I woke before sunrise with the kind of clarity you get before a fist fight. I poured coffee, stepped onto the porch, and looked out over what used to be a peaceful ranch. Today, it was a battlefield. By 7, I was on the road to a hardware supplier 2 towns over, the kind of place that sells gear to people who work for a living, not to folks buying decorative planters. The bell on the door jingled when I walked in. Cliff, the bearded owner, raised an eyebrow. "Jack, you all right?" "Nope," I said. "I'm getting invaded by yoga moms, picnickers, and a golden doodle uprising." He barked a laugh. "Sounds like HOA trouble. Worse. I've got a Karen." His expression dropped into full seriousness. "Say no more. What do you need?" "Cameras, fencing, motion lights, sensors, alarms, the works," I said, "and I want the kind of fence that screams 'turn back' before you see Jesus." Cliff grinned. "I've got just what you need." He led me to the back, behind a wire cage where they keep the serious equipment. Industrial-grade electric fence wire, solar controllers, grounding rods, high-voltage warning signs, motion-triggered LED floods, a camera system with coverage like a casino. "This setup," Cliff said, patting a controller, "is non-lethal but unforgettable. Anyone grabs that fence will jump back like they just saw every bad decision they've ever made." "Perfect," I said. "Load it." As he and an employee hauled everything to my truck, 2 older ranchers wandered over. "You finally electrifying that perimeter?" one asked. "Not by choice," I said. "The HOA decided my land belongs to them." They froze. "You're kidding," the shorter one said. "Nope. They sent half the neighborhood onto my place yesterday." Silence. Then they both shook their heads. "That's how wars start," one muttered. "Exactly." On the drive home, I pictured Margaret in her living room, rallying her board like a general with a PowerPoint titled, "How to Steal Land You Didn't Earn." Bullet points: lie. Trespass. Pretend you're the government. It actually made me laugh. My spirits dipped again when I saw a sleek black sedan parked at my gate. Tinted windows. Shiny. Not local. As I climbed out, the driver door opened. A man in a too-stiff suit stepped out, carrying a leather portfolio. He looked like he'd never sweated in his life. "Mr. Monroe?" he asked. "Who's asking?" He cleared his throat. "Jonathan Burke, counsel for the Willow Creek HOA, of course." "What do you want?" I said. He opened the portfolio and held out a paper. "I'm here to present the HOA's formal position regarding the land integration process." "Integration?" I repeated. "You mean theft?" "The HOA does not agree with that characterization," he said. I almost laughed. "You're kidding?" "No. And failure to comply with this cease and desist," he tapped the document, "may result in legal action. You are to remove all obstructive fencing and refrain from interfering with community use." I stepped closer, dropping my voice. "Let's clear this up. This land is mine. My grandfather built it. I maintain it. I pay the taxes. Your HOA's fantasies don't change that." He swallowed. "The board believes the annexation is valid." "I don't care what they believe," I said. "Belief isn't law. Deeds are law. Records are law, and you don't have those." He hesitated. I saw it, the crack. He didn't fully buy what he was selling. He just had a retainer and a job. "Look," I said, "I'm handling this the right way. Go tell Margaret that instead of stealing property, she should pick up a hobby." He blinked, such as knitting, bird watching, therapy, anything but leadership. His lips twitched like he wanted to smile. "I'll relay your message." "Good. And Jonathan?" "Yes." "Next time you come onto my property without permission, bring hiking boots and a signed waiver. You'll need both." He got back in the car and left. I didn't waste a second. I unloaded spools of wire, posts, controllers, cameras. I dragged tools through the dirt, hammered stakes, set solar panels, ran lines. Every swing of the sledgehammer was therapy. By midday, the first perimeter was hot. By sundown, the whole property line was wired. Enough juice to make a raccoon reconsider its life choices, but not enough to kill anything bigger than a bug. Sweaty and filthy, I stepped back and flipped the main switch. The fence came alive with a low, steady buzz, like the land itself was humming, "Try me." It felt good. I mounted cameras, installed motion floods, set alarms. By the time I was done, my ranch had better security than half the county buildings. That night, I sat at my laptop cycling through camera feeds. For the first time in days, I felt it again. Control. Margaret thought votes and lies would beat a man defending his home. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop on the nightstand. When I finally checked, a dozen motion alerts from my cameras stared back at me. Something, or a lot of somethings, was at the fence. I yanked on jeans and boots and stepped outside. The sun was barely up, but my boundary line looked like the starting grid of a mediocre parade. Blue minivans, silver sedans, SUVs, a whole string of vehicles clustered along the road. At the front of the mess stood Margaret, clipboard in hand, flanked by two board members. Behind them, a knot of homeowners murmured, staring at my new fence like it had personally insulted them. I walked toward them, hands in my pockets, calm but coiled. Margaret cleared her throat theatrically. "Mr. Monroe," she called, "we need to address a serious violation." "Which one?" I asked. "You sending trespassers, or you forging annexation documents?" Her eyes snapped to the fence. "This," she said, jabbing a finger at the wire, "this electric fencing is a danger to the community." "It's only dangerous to people trying to touch what doesn't belong to them," I said. "So really, it's a public service." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd before Margaret silenced it with a glare. "We are demanding," she said sharply, "that you remove this electric fence immediately. It violates HOA safety standards." I raised my brows. "Funny, since I'm not in your HOA. That is disputed," she shot back. "Not by anyone who can read." Her nostrils flared. "Jack, this fence poses a risk." "No," I said. "You pose a risk by telling everyone my property is a park." She stiffened. "The board believes—" "The board," I cut in, "is about to owe me $200,000. That cracked her mask, just for a second, but everyone sighed. Whispers rolled through the group. "What's he talking about? 200,000? Is that real?" I lifted my folder. "I have the paperwork right here. Anyone who wants to see proof that your president forged an annexation form is welcome to take a look." Murmurs got louder. A woman in a floral cardigan whispered, "She did what?" Margaret clutched her clipboard like a shield. "Jack, stop spreading misinformation. We will handle this through legal Chan." "Already are," I said calmly. "You said to cease and desist. My lawyer sent you a counterclaim. It demands full back dues, insurance, land maintenance costs, and tax contributions for the last 20 years. If you want my land so badly, you're paying for every inch." One board member swallowed. "Margaret, did you know about this?" "Of course I knew," she said, voice a little too high. "I acted in the community's best interests." "Wrong answer." "You lied to us," someone shouted. "You said the annexation was approved. You didn't say anything about extra fees." "My HOA bill is already a mortgage payment. I am not paying more because you tried to play land baron." The crowd turned fully. I stood there, arms crossed, enjoying the spectacle of consequences. "This isn't over," Margaret finally snapped at me over the noise. "It already is," I said quietly. She shot me a look of pure venom, spun around, and stomped back to her car. The board members were left to soak up the anger. I went back to the house and called Curtis. "Well?" he asked, sounding entertained. "Anyone get zapped yet?" "No one important," I said. Margaret tried to rally the troops. It blew up on her. He chuckled. "So the coup is crumbling. You could say that." "Good," he said. "Then it's time for Phase 2. I exhaled. "Phase 2? The legal chokehold," he said. "We make it crystal clear. If they insist your ranch is HOA land, their entire operation goes bankrupt." "How?" "We formalize everything. If they claim jurisdiction, then they assume liability. Back dues, maintenance insurance, taxes, 20 years of it. We'll put the numbers in front of every homeowner." A slow smile tugged at my mouth. "And if they don't want to pay, then they admit they never had authority," Curtis finished. "Either way, we win." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day stockpiling evidence, photos, trespass logs, dates, times. Enough documentation that even a judge who hated ranchers would have to side with me. By late afternoon, I needed supplies, so I headed into town. As soon as I stepped into the general store, I felt eyes on me. People whispered, shot me curious looks. Mrs. Green from 2 roads over shuffled up. "Jack," she said softly, "I heard what the HOA did." I'm so sorry. Not your fault, I said. She leaned in. I never trusted Margaret, always too hungry for control. That was putting it mildly. At the register, a younger guy in a ball cap approached. Hey, is it true? He asked. She really tried to claim your ranch? Yeah. He shook his head. Damn, she's lost it. If you need help fencing, tools, whatever, call me. I thanked him. It was good to know I wasn't alone. Out front, something caught my eye. 3 men in suits stood by a black SUV across the street. Not local, too polished, too alert, and watching me. I paused. They turned away a beat too late. I snapped a photo casually and headed to my truck. As I pulled out, they climbed into the SUV and slipped in behind me. I didn't drive home. I cut over the old Miller Bridge, looped through an orchard, and popped back out onto the highway. The SUV blasted past, clearly having lost me. They weren't good at tailing people. But the fact they were trying it all, that rattled me. If Margaret was bringing in outside muscle liars, investigators, whoever that meant, she was desperate. This wasn't about property anymore. It was about power and ego. By the time I got back, the sun was low. The fence hummed. Cameras blinked. My ranch felt like a fortress. I stood there at the edge of my driveway and made a new promise. I wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was going to take their little empire apart. By the weekend, I'd fallen into a nervous routine of monitoring cameras like a paranoid hawk. Any rustle, any car slowing near the fence, every ping pumped adrenaline through my veins. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. Because with people like Margaret, escalation isn't if, it's when. When. Arrived Saturday at 10:13 a.m. I was loading feed into my truck when a wave of honks rolled down the gravel like an approaching storm. 1 car, 2, 5, a whole convoy. SUVs, minivans, sedans, pickups, dozens of vehicles poured down my driveway like the saddest parade in history. Music blared. Kids hung out the windows. People waved folding chairs and coolers like they were headed to the beach. You've got to be kidding me, I thought. Then I saw her, Margaret, standing in the open sunroof of her white Lexus like she was leading a march, clutching a megaphone. Sun hat the size of a satellite dish, pastel pink outfit, pink fury leaking out around the seams. I walked toward the fence, doing my best not to show how close I was to losing it. Margaret climbed out, raised her clipboard like a holy object, and boomed into the megaphone. Attention, community members. Polite applause. Curious murmurs. My fellow residents, she continued, today marks a historic moment. The first official Willow Creek community picnic on our newly acquired community land. Cheers erupted. I could almost hear a blood vessel pop in my temple. People started unloading grills, speakers, volleyball nets, kiddie pools, hammocks. Kids ran toward my fields. Dogs barked. It was a full festival on my ranch. And then the inevitable happened. A jogger, headphones in, neon shoes, oblivious, started warming up along the fence. Without looking, he cut his corner too close. Snap. His shoulder brushed the wire. The low-volt jolt hit him like a thunderclap. He screamed, jumped 3 feet backward, and crashed into someone's picnic basket. Food flew. Someone shrieked. Potato salad hit the dirt. Margaret froze, megaphone squealing feedback. I tried not to smile. I truly did. But one corner of my mouth betrayed me. The jogger scrabbled up, hair standing on end like a cartoon. What was that? I leaned against the fence, casual. A legally installed, county-approved, non-lethal electric deterrent. Warning signs every 20 feet. You electrocuted me, he yelled. No, I said. You electrocuted yourself when you grabbed a fence on someone else's property. Nearby, kids chasing a soccer ball stopped as it rolled toward the wire. The ball tapped the fence. Zap. It shot backward like it had been punted. The kids screamed and ran for their parents, who immediately started yelling at Margaret. You told us the fence was temporary. You said it wasn't dangerous. This is insane. Margaret turned a deeper shade of pink. Everyone please remain calm, she squeaked into the megaphone. This is just a minor setback. A grill tipped over in the commotion. A man fell through a folding chair he'd overestimated. A frisbee flew past Margaret's head. It was chaos. She stormed up to me, eyes burning. Turn it off, she hissed. No, I said, sipping my coffee. This is illegal, she shrieked. Check already, I replied. Perfectly within county code. Non-lethal, clearly marked, on private property. This is not private. If you say community property one more time, I interrupted. I'm having my lawyer calculate late fees for the last 20 years. She snapped her mouth shut. Behind her, the circus continued. Someone tried to snag a kite that had drifted too close, poking it with a metal camping fork. Zap! The fork flew out of his hand like it had been launched. He screamed. Other people screamed. Even a dog howled. Margaret looked around at the destroyed image she'd tried to stage, her proud picnic turning into a slapstick disaster. This isn't over, she spat. Oh, I said, it's just getting fun. She spun away, tripped over a cooler and went down. The megaphone made a dying honk as she hit the ground. More chaos. Within 10 minutes, everyone was fleeing. Cars revved. Children cried. Half-assembled grills were dragged away. When the last one left, all that remained were tire marks, a broken sandal, 2 juice boxes, and a mangled kite. I went inside and pulled up the camera footage. Every second had been captured in glorious HD, the trespassing, the zaps, the panic. Curtis was going to have a field day. But I knew Margaret. Public humiliation wasn't the end. It was the beginning of whatever she'd do next. Monday morning came with an eerie quiet. No cars slowing by the gate. No joggers pretending not to see the signs. It didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the pause before a storm. Around 9:30, an engine rolled up the driveway, white sedan. Official-looking plates, or at least trying to look official. 2 men in matching suits climbed out, clean haircuts, humorless expressions. They radiated, "We think we're important." One flashed a badge so fast it was just a glint. "Mr. Monroe," he said, "we're here on behalf of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." "You know flashing fake badges is a crime, right?" I said. His jaw tightened. "These are HOA identification badges." "Ah," I said, "so cosplay." He cleared his throat. "We're investigating multiple complaints regarding hazardous property modifications." "You mean my legal electric fence?" "Yes." Several residents reported harm. "I didn't harm anyone," I said. "The fence shocked people who touched it. That means they trespassed." Case closed. He pushed on. "We need to inspect the property to verify compliance with community standards." "No," I said. He blinked. "Sir, refusing an HOA compliance inspection may result in—" "You're on private land," I cut in. "And unless you brought a warrant or fresh cookies, you can turn around and leave." The second man stepped forward holding a tablet. "Refusal may lead to further escalation from the Associa." "You know what else leads to escalation?" I asked. "Trespassing." They looked at each other, clearly not used to hearing no. I pointed at the fence. "See that? The one humming? Touch it. If you survive, you can inspect anything you like." They stepped back in unison. "No further questions," the first said stiffly. "We'll report your non-cooperation." "And I'll report your attempted trespass," I said. "Drive safe." They left faster than deer on opening day. But the encounter iced my gut. These weren't just board members. Margaret was outsourcing. I went back inside, grabbed a snack, and checked my email. A new message from the county clerk sat at the top. The HOA had filed a formal complaint, not against me, against the county. They accused the county of failing to enforce community development integration standards by refusing to recognize the HOA's jurisdiction over my ranch. The language was insane. They claimed I was obstructing legal community access, creating hazardous conditions, violating unity directives. And my personal favorite, the HOA has been granted implied territorial rights. Implied territorial rights. What were they, the British Empire? I read every line. Margaret wasn't backing down. She was trying to rewrite reality. I called Curtis. He picked up mid-laugh. "Let me guess," he said. "You just read the HOA's epic fan fiction." "You saw it already?" "Oh yeah," he said. "They CC'd my office." My assistant said, and I quote, "This reads like Margaret dictated it while drinking boxed wine." I scrubbed a hand over my face. "So now what?" "Now," he said, "we go nuclear." I straightened. "Define nuclear." "We file a counterclaim stating that if the HOA insists your ranch is part of their territory, they are responsible for 20 years of financial obligations tied to that land, such as back HOA dues. Your bill alone is over $120,000. Add 20 years of road and fence maintenance. liability insurance for every potential incident on your property, plus tax contributions and projected annual assessments. We're north of $500,000. I almost dropped the phone. Curtis, they can't pay that. Exactly, he said, which is why this is the nuclear option. The homeowners will revolt the instant they see those numbers. What do I do meanwhile? Nothing heroic, he said. Hold the line. Let Margaret keep insisting your land is theirs. The more she doubles down, the harder she falls. We hung up, and I stepped outside for air. A group of about 15 homeowners stood at the edge of my property. This time, nobody dared cross the fence. They clutched the county complaint. Some waved their HOA fee statements like white flags. One man, mid-40s, looked like he hadn't slept. He stepped forward. Jack, he said, voice tight. Is it true? If the HOA takes your land, we're responsible for all this. Yes, I said. Every word. Panic rippled through the group, but Margaret said it wouldn't cost anything. She said it would be good for property values. I can't afford higher dues. I'm already stretched. A woman in glasses stepped closer. Jack, what do you want us to do? I looked at them, tired, angry neighbors who'd been dragged into a war they never asked for. Hold your president accountable, I said. They exchanged looks, fed up, furious, and I knew the tide had turned. It was no longer me versus the HOA. It was the neighborhood versus Margaret. The rebellion came fast. For the next 2 days, the whole subdivision buzzed. Whispered conversations at mailboxes, heated arguments in driveways, group chats blowing up, people pacing with paperwork in hand. Late Tuesday, I got a text from Derek, a quiet neighbor I barely knew. HOA emergency meeting tonight. You should be there. Trust me. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my jacket, set my cameras, and drove to the clubhouse. Cars lined every curb for blocks. People streamed into the building like it was election night. Inside, the room was packed, every chair filled, people standing in the back and along the walls. At the front, behind the table, was Margaret. And for the first time, she looked rattled, hair slightly frizzed, lipstick a little off, hands moving too fast. She saw me come in and stiffened. Mr. Monroe, she snapped, this meeting is for HOA members only. I smiled and walked down the aisle. Good thing you illegally forced my property into your HOA, I said loudly. Means I'm a member now. Gasps. Murmurs. Heads turned. Margaret hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been so obsessed with grabbing the land she'd forgotten membership includes something important. Voting rights. I took a seat in the back. People around me nodded, some muttering apologies. Others just relieved someone had stood up to her. The gavel slammed. This special session is now in order, Margaret announced, trying for regal. We are here to address public concerns regarding the recent Community Development Initiative. You mean the illegal land grab, someone shouted. The fraudulent annexation, another yelled. Please refrain from inflammatory language, she said sharply. As president of the Willow Creek HOA, you won't be president much longer, a woman near the front called. Applause broke out. Actual applause. Margaret hammered the gavel again. Enough. We will proceed in an orderly fashion. But order was gone. A tall man in a green jacket stood. Did you or did you not file an annexation request without homeowner approval? That form was a preliminary, yes or no, he barked. She swallowed. Technically, yes. The room exploded. You lied to us. You said it was approved. You never mentioned financial liability. A woman waved Curtis's counterclaim in the air. This says if Jack's land is considered HOA property, we're responsible for over $500,000 in costs. Did you know that? That document is exaggerated, Margaret snapped. It's manipulated. It's copied directly from county statutes, the woman shot back. You lied. A man stood up, face red. My dues already doubled last year. For what? Those giant planters at the entrance? Those were community aesthetic improvements, Margaret said. They cost $12,000, someone yelled. And they're ugly. Laughter broke out. Even I couldn't help it. Margaret slammed the gavel so hard it nearly cracked. I did what I had to do for this community. No, I said, standing, voice steady. You did what benefited you. And when it started to drown you, you tried to drag everyone else under. All eyes swung to me. You, she hissed, have no authority to speak. Actually, I said, thanks to your bogus annexation, I do. I'm a member. which means I get a vote like everyone else here. And from what I'm seeing, the first vote on the table isn't about land. Silence. Then someone shouted, "Motion to remove Margaret Dawson as HOA president." "Seconded," another voice called. Hands shot up. Dozens. Practically the whole room. Margaret tried to shout over them, but the roar of voices, the sheer anger, was too loud. The motion carried in under 30 seconds. Just like that, she was out. Renoobs. Overthrown by the very people she'd claimed to represent. She sagged into her chair, face white, clipboard slipping from her fingers and clacking onto the floor. For a fraction of a second, fear flashed across her features. My sympathy lasted about 2 seconds. The room devolved into chaos, cheering, hugging, venting years of pent-up frustration. I slipped out a side door into the cool night. The clubhouse buzzed behind me like a hive with a queen ripped out. The next morning, something happened I did not expect. I was on my porch with coffee when a moving truck rumbled down the street and stopped at Margaret's house. I almost spit my drink. She wasn't just humiliated. She was leaving. I watched movers haul box after box while she paced the yard barking orders, all that polished HOA president gloss stripped away. She just looked tired and bitter. When the truck finally pulled away, I lifted my mug and a silent toast. One enemy down. But the story wasn't finished. The day after she left, the neighborhood felt different. Birds, sprinklers, distant lawnmowers. No cars slowing to gawk at my ranch. No random play groups. No HOA patrols. For the first time in weeks, real quiet. Around noon, footsteps shuffled on my porch. Not angry, not aggressive, just nervous. I opened the door. 3 HOA board members stood there like kids outside a principal's office. Front and center was Derek, the guy who texted me about the meeting. He clutched a folder like it might bite him. "Jack," he said, clearing his throat, "we, need to talk." I leaned on the doorframe. "Unless this is about returning my property taxes or apologizing on behalf of civilization, I'm busy." He gave a weak laugh. "It's not that. It's about leadership." I frowned. Leadership? The woman beside him, mid-50s, glasses, the permanent look of someone juggling bills, stepped forward. "The HOA needs a new president," she said. "Well, needed. We had a temporary one for about 5 minutes, but congratulations," I said. "Pick another. A brick would do better than Margaret." They didn't laugh. Derek rubbed the back of his neck. "Jack, we want it to be you." I stared. "Me?" "Yes," he said. "You're the only one who stood up to her. People respect you now. Half the neighborhood was ready to sue me last week." "That was before they knew what she did," the woman said. "Before the annexation. Before the picnic. Before they saw you weren't the villain, just the only one willing to fight her." The third board member, a tall guy with a beard, chimed in. "If you're president, you'll have the authority to change how this place works. Structural changes." My eyes narrowed. "What kind of structural changes?" The woman lowered her voice. "You could dissolve the HOA." The porch went quiet. A breeze rustled through. Somewhere behind the barn, a goat bleated. "You're serious," I said. "All the way," Derek replied. "We think it's the best thing for everyone." I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. Paced once, twice. Me, running an HOA, the very thing I hated. But the chance to kill it, to make sure no future Margaret could ever use it as a weapon, that was tempting. "If I say yes," I asked, "how fast can we vote on dissolving it?" "Within a week," the bearded guy said. "Maybe less." "And if I say no?" The woman sighed. "Then someone else takes the job, and we can't promise they won't be another Margaret." There it was. They were scared, and I couldn't blame them. I put my hands on my hips and took a long breath. "Fine," I said. "I'll do it." Their faces lit up like someone had canceled property taxes. "But listen carefully," I added. "If I become president, first thing I'm doing is burning every one of your stupid rule books. Second thing is dissolving the HOA entirely." "Agreed," they said in unison. That was almost disappointingly easy. 5 days later, the clubhouse was full again. This time, the mood was different. No tension, just hope and exhaustion. Derek banged the gavel. "We nominate Jack Monroe for HOA president." People actually cheered. I stood there in my usual work clothes, feeling wildly underdressed to destroy an institution. Hands shot up for the vote, almost unanimous. Just like that, I was HOA president. President of something I despised. It lasted 13 minutes. I walked to the front, took the gavel, and said, "Clear enough for the back row." As my first and only act as president, I move that the Willow Creek Homeowners Association be permanently dissolved. For a second, silence. Then the place erupted. Gasps. Then shouts. Then pure joy. People clapped, whistled, hugged. Years of fines over mailbox colors, lawn lengths, trash bins, parking, parties gone. No more surprise assessments, no more clipboard threats. Real freedom. Somebody put on music. Someone cracked open champagne. It felt less like a meeting and more like a parole hearing where everyone got released. To celebrate, I did the only thing that made sense. I threw the biggest barbecue my ranch had ever seen. Smoke curled up from the smoker. Kids chased each other around the yard. Teenagers collected eggs from the coop. Dogs sprinted in chaotic circles. Grown men opened beers like they'd just been sprung from prison. This time, everyone was here with permission. My electric fence hummed in the background like a content guard dog. Curtis showed up halfway through, already holding a plate. He took a bite of brisket and groaned. "Jack, this is better than winning in court?" "High praise," I said. "You really did it," he said, clinking his beer bottle against mine. "You didn't just beat an HOA, you killed one." "I had help," I said, nodding at the crowd. "Sure," he said, "but not everybody turns a land grab into a liberation movement." We ate, drank, and watched the sun sink behind the ridge. The sky went gold, then orange, then deep red, laying a warm glow over the ranch. My ranch, safe again. No HOA, no forged paperwork, no more invasions dressed up as community events. Just me, my land, and peace. And nobody, no Karen, no board, no clipboard warrior, was ever taking that from me again. When the last truck rolled out and the ranch went quiet, I sat on my porch under a sky full of stars and let it all hit me. How close I'd come to losing everything. Not to a fire, not to a storm, not to a bank, to paperwork, to a woman who thought entitled and in charge meant the same thing. The truth is, a lot of battles aren't about fists or guns. They're about standing up when someone tries to turn their opinion into law. About not letting bullies hide behind clipboards and letterheads. If you don't push back, they'll take more than you ever imagined. So here's my message to you. Know your rights.